Hey besties, so I was working on our scripted videos for this week. It's going to be a Crag matchup chart, I believe. And I had to push it back, sadly. I was kind of bummed about it, because I really love to get videos out to you guys every Tuesday, and I thought, why don't I go check out the Nolt board? And I really didn't think there would be that many responses, but scrolling through here, there's a lot of responses from the devs, so I thought we could take a minute to go through them and see what's poppin'. To start, let's go ahead and check out the completed. They said add new Nolt to update notes, which is here, and the Demigod Arcane has some sound effects issues, which both of these have been fixed. I don't really think I need to dwindle on these because they're already in the game with bug fixes. For the not planned section, they say add back last stock OSTs. I love the shout out here. They say, we had this in Rivals 1 with Ethereal Gates and Frozen Gates. Tekken and Street Fighter have this as well. I think it adds tension to the match and makes the last stock a lot more epic. They changed the status to not planned. They say, while changes to the OST aren't on our roadmap, there is something coming in the next few patches that might help make last stock more interesting. Keep an eye or ear out for it. I don't know about this, and I think I would know a lot about last stock. But in all realness, I think this would be pretty neat. Maybe they'll like speed up the tempo of the music or something instead of making just like a new track altogether. They also say, please fix EXP gain in online lobbies. I've seen this one a lot. The poster says, this was on the last Nolt board, but I am posting it again because it seems to be a really popular sentiment and there hasn't been a response to it. I do agree it is popular, I see it a lot. The fact that playing with friends is punishing is just seriously a bad idea, and everyone on the last post, and in the Reddit thread, seems to agree. It has discouraged me and others from playing the game as much because it ruins the casual player experience. I only play for 3 to 4 hours a week, I think this is the average player by the way, because that's all I can do. I'm barely making any progress. My friends and I have resorted to queuing into casual matches at the same time. Me and my friends will do this too, and they always get mad at me. And hoping we find each other. We do quit if we find someone random, wasting their time and our time. Playing with friends is the heart and soul of the genre, and it doesn't make sense for it to be discouraged and punished. I'm not asking for it to have a higher XP gain than playing with randoms, but make it the same. Again, the casual player experience is bad in general right now, with nothing to do, with the lack of good tutorials, a great training mode, offline side modes, and most of all, we can't play with friends without the game actively discouraging it. Please consider adjusting this. I truly think it'll be healthy for the game. I understand like wanting to have players queue in the casual modes, right? But I do agree it is a bit of a bummer that we have that. Dan comments on this though, he says, first of all, I would like to acknowledge that it's a great suggestion, and everyone who has suggested and upvoted it is smart and probably attractive. I thought it said attentive, and then I had to do a double take. I was like, whoa. However, every match that is played online in Rivals v 2 costs our dev team money. We are running Rivals 2 on dedicated servers in order to provide stability across the player base, as well as open the door for crossplay once we get into console development. I'm actually really excited for this crossplay because, from my knowledge, there's not a plat fighter with like good crossplay like on console and PC. They also say, we also acknowledge that for those players who aren't addicted to looking at Steam charts, the way that they determine the livelihood of a game is by queue times and queue match quality. Therefore, our priority is to incentivize players to use the match-made modes in order to keep queues full and reward players more for online time spent in those queues. This is why there are XP bonuses for 2v2 and free-for-all, so those queues have a chance to still have players while being less active than the main queues. We do have ideas to improve this system even more, possibly by merging casual queues into one for a single XP bonus. But for now, the XP rewards are laid out the best to support our online infrastructure. Now, if the game keeps growing and we get more players, or we're happy with how our updated casual queues rewards are working, then we would like to reinvestigate the XP formula both in public and private lobbies. But for now, we don't have plans to change the numbers. I think this is like a pretty solid response, like it explains like the devs' point of view and their positions, right? While also saying, yeah, we're probably not going to implement this. One thing I have been thinking about, by the way, is if we have like community like 2v2 queues and free-for-all nights in the last stock server, or just here on the channel where like players would just queue free-for-all if they wanted to. That would be kind of fun, I think, so you could get like matches with like randoms online that are in the community. Let me know what y'all think about that. Heyo, I'm hopping in here really quickly to interrupt. I'm in the editing stage right now, but I just wanted to ask if you could leave a like to help support the video. Or comment down below and let me know if you actually like these kind of videos. I'm never sure if you guys like the Nolt board or the scripted content more, or maybe a mix of both. I'm really wanting to expand the content and how much we produce while also keeping the quality high and making sure it's something you guys actually want to watch. So I always love to hear from y'all and would love to hear what y'all want to see in the future. Thanks as always, and let's get back to the video. Moving on though, they say, for the planned but far, add sounds on throws. Throws do not hit you on the way out, like the back throw of Zerburn, Crag, and Loxodon. They lack a bit of oomph with them due to having no sound to play out. Throws that hit you, like all the Clarins and Rana's back throws, have a sound that play from said hit, so there's more impact on the throw, though it could be better in my opinion. In Ultimate, throws have a sound that play out no matter if you're just flung away or smacked on the way out. See the back throw of Marth and Kin's throws, that only toss you away for example. Also, see Shulk's throws, where even if there's no sound on the sword hit of his throws, there's other SFX being played. Notably, there is a sound when slightly throwing the character before Shulk's sword swing, and after the sword hit. This can be applied to other throws in the game that hit you away, since I think the sound of the hit alone does not sell the feel of the throw enough. I remember posting this back during the beta Nolt boards, and I think it got on the roadmap of one of them too. Was not able to check to be sure though, those Nolt boards are longer up. I do wish there was like an easier way to find all the Nolt boards, I think it'd be cool. And then it was responded to with, you're right about being in the roadmap, but they're still coming. I can't say for sure when these will get in, but it's definitely on the to-do list. This is cool to hear. I definitely would not make this a priority if I was the dev team, right? But it is nice to know that we will get like quality of life changes to the game's like audio system in the near future. Or maybe distant future, I guess. They say 2-player local doubles is planned but far. 2 people, 1 setup playing online, thanks. I think this is in the last Nolt board. Yeah. But Dan goes ahead and says, yeah, this is planned, but it's still a bit away since we have other pressing issues taking up our to-do list. We'd like to tackle this sometime in 2025, but we'll see if we can clear everything out to achieve that. This is pretty promising. I do agree, like there's other pressing things that do need to be added to the game first. But like, yeah, this would be really neat. I'm looking forward to this. For our last plan but far, we have, please make it so we can play offline while queuing. The poster says, if it could contribute to coins plus EXP, that would be so good as well. I would queue online so much more if I was guaranteed to be playing the game. I live in Australia, so it's not nearly as popular. Also, I would give it a chance to less common queues, like 2v2 and free-for-all way more. In Australia, it's literally impossible for these queues to pop. I know with Americans, you guys might have instant queue pops, sometimes yeah. But I would love this, and it would make the game so much better in regions where the game is still emerging in popularity. Thanks bros. And Dan Farnese changed it to planned but far. He says, good news, we have an engineer on our team right now who is working on playtesting on character select now. We don't have an estimate for it yet, but we would like to use similar tech to allow players to enter a training module while in queue. But it will look and function a bit differently, so it's later on our to-do list than local/character select playtesting. I'm actually really excited for this. One thing about Rivals 1 that I liked a lot is I'd set my control scheme and I would just be able to test it on the menu. So seeing that that's coming back as well as like maybe like a training mode while in queue, those are both great news. I'm really a big fan of that. Moving on, however, to our thanks tier, we have the Edalus changes feel amazing. As a student again, I like his Lifeweaver PFP, I'm a big fan. They say, just a heads up, he's way more fun now than having a kill throw and shield break, and real speed boost on dash attack make him a lot more engaging and fluid. Also, the fur is nice. And SBS just says, glad you're enjoying the changes. They also say, I love the shield sound changes. Even that little change makes fights feel so cool. And Dan says, thanks man, I appreciate you. I think it's cool that the devs like read the Nolt board, you know, and they don't just respond to problems, they respond to positivity. I'm always like a big like, we should have more positivity, so this is neat to see. I will say with the shield sound changes, I wish they didn't play as often, or maybe if we had like a variety of shield sound changes, you know? Like maybe if there's like 4 or 5 different ones, then it wouldn't sound so repetitive. They say, I love Orcane, I love Orcane, I love Orcane, and I can get behind this. They say, he feels so good to play, and the skins are so good. I just need to express to the devs how much I love this autistic water puppy. I'm glad that like someone else called him autistic, because me and my friends have like a running gag that he is, and I think it's so cute and fun. They say for partially addressed, add sounds when charging moves. Some chargeable specials, most notably Lockstone's neutral special, have basically no sound when charging the move. Because of that, you can generally just not notice when they're charging it at all, and it kinda lacks the impact that it should have when you let the full charge rip, since it feels like it came out of nowhere. Some moves already have SFX when charging, but I think it's too quiet, like Zetter's and the start of Claren's neutral specials. Also, maybe thinking this is just ultimate bias I have, but strong attacks could use something like SFX that games use when they start charging their smash attacks. They're even characterized based on certain categories, like Swordies having their own unique charge SFX right now. Every rival has a voice line played when charging, which kinda works, but I feel like it does not catch your attention enough since it starts at a low intensity. Posted this many Nolt boards ago reposting for viability. And then the devs say, this is something that's been on our radar for a while. We started the process of adding at least a startup sound for characters, check Raster's strong attacks for example. I have noticed this one actually. Even when they don't really support a full-on charging sound, the game plan is to keep adding these for everyone for a more gamified approach. Like for example, something we might look into in the future if we ever feel a solution wasn't enough. But it's not really planned for now. This makes sense because I feel like it's not like the biggest pressing issue, let's say if you're the sound design team, right? It's like making sound design for the next character, or maybe like for shields, right? That's probably higher on your radar, but knowing that this is on their radar is pretty cool. They also say, explain balance philosophy in patch notes. I would actually kind of like this one more. Before reading this person's response, whenever I do the patch breakdowns, right? Sometimes it is hard for me if I don't play a character, let's say if Maple's getting a change, sometimes it's a bit tricky to understand exactly what they're going for. Like with the recent Maple changes to her tether, I was kind of like, wait, so like are you trying to like force a 50-50? Like I wasn't 100% sure, and then if I read that to y'all, that can come off as confusing to you guys as the listener and the viewer. But this poster says, while it's great to see the goal of each specific change, it'd be great to see better overarching visions and why the team believes a character needs to increase or decrease their power level. What you are basing it on, tournament placement, player counts, or overall ranked win rates. I'm asking for this to be made clear, since it really feels like lower power characters like Lockstone, Orcane, Fleet, and up until today, Edalis feel like they keep getting their power level taken down a notch with few, if any, compensatory buffs. While characters like Zetterburn and Rano receive few nerfs, and they're often accompanied by buffs that outweigh them. And I want to know exactly why this keeps happening, how the team views the power of each character, and decides what changes need to be made. And then down here, SBS responds, who's actually in charge of balancing, by the way. I don't think that Dan Fernacey does any of the balancing work, but I think he does test the patches, from what I've heard. He says, hey, just to let you know, we do actually give explanations for the patch overall for the individual characters, and for almost every change. For example, the Zetterburn section of 1.1.4 says, Zetterburn is getting some small changes that reduce active frames on his powerful down air that allow him to keep some momentum while using a grounded neutral special. And then he goes over some patch notes here. He says, overall, what the last post by Anon stated is correct. They quoted the main into the paragraph and laid out what to expect in the patch itself. It's impossible to cover up every single thing in each patch. If we tried, then we genuinely wouldn't ever get a patch out due to consistent last-second ads that need to get tested, etc. We do our best to use the dev voice to explain things, and we have to add screenshots of hitbox changes in the most recent patch to help visually portray the changes. I actually really did like this. This helped me a lot personally. We'll always strive to be as open as possible and continue trying to improve as we move forward. I do like this note here. However, I do wish that some of the patch notes were just like a little bit clearer. I can't agree with that, where it's like, let's say, as I said, if you don't play a character right, sometimes it's kind of tricky to understand it. Normally I can get the general gist of everything though, so I don't think it's in like some terrible spot at all. Moving on to discussing options, we have what happens to the Buenos Aires server. Please, it's very important for a server to bridge the gap between many places in South America. And then they say, hey, just replying that we're looking into this with PlayFab. So it just seems like this was something not on the Rivals dev team's end. And that is a big problem. I have a lot of friends that live in Southern America, so I really do hope this gets reinstated. In this segment, we also have, give every Abyss skin a Midnight Abyss palette. They say, as it says in the title, it feels weird that only Claren has it. Also, an Abyss skin palette idea I had was to copy the color scheme directly from regular Abyss palette, but I don't know if that would look different or good lol. Anyways, yeah, give the rest of the characters a Midnight Abyss palette pretty please. I actually don't know what Midnight Abyss Clarin looks like, so I'm gonna cut to that really quickly and throw it up here on screen. Okay, so I'm here on the Dragdown Wiki. If y'all don't know about this, it's actually like a sick resource. I want to do a video kind of chatting about it in the future. But this is Clarin's Midnight palette, and these are her other palettes. So I do agree, I don't know why just Clarin has this. But hopefully this is something they can just add into the game over time. Anyways, back to the Nolt board. SBS says, "Hey, glad you like the palette. It was actually made for me based on the colors and aesthetics of a character I designed back in 2020. It's not official in Rivals lore as of this moment, which is kind of cool. Maybe they'll add that character in the future, which is why only Clarin has it at the moment. We've seen a lot of praise for this palette though, so it could be something we do for other characters in the future." And then he links his Blue Sky, which, let's see. Okay. Yeah, so this is super sick. He's just got some photos of it in-game, which is really cool. Moving on to the next section, though, we have the monitoring section, which I think is normally if the devs are looking at something and not fully dedicated to an idea yet. The first one says, "Give Rano fair actual startup and recovery." They say, "It's fine that Rano has this consistent of a kill and combo move, but the fact it's frame 7 with little recovery, kills really early, and combos into itself so well is comically overtuned. Just make it a bit slower and have some proper recovery so it feels less egregious." I actually did a video talking about like over-centralizing moves a little while ago, and this move still hasn't been addressed since then. I just kind of feel like you could buff like other parts of Rano's kit and then tune down this move while keeping it interesting, and then you can make Rano more interesting. Dan says, "Rano Fair just got nerfed in the mid-month February update. We're tracking it and may make adjustments to it in the future." Sweet. So I assume that just means they've adjusted it and they kind of want to like see how it goes over time. They say, "Sound design on hitting moves sounds way worse. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I feel like changing how hitting moves sound in any situation is bad. I thought the team had nailed the sounds to make moves on hit sound amazing, but now they feel super reverby and echoey. It's doing too much. It's not horrible, but it does not sound great IMO. Again, I'm probably in the minority here." This is actually something I talked about with some friends. I feel like the sounds that they play now are just a bit too loud, and I feel like if they had different sounds, right? So like, let's say like if you got hit by Clarin's sword, that would be a different sound than Loxodon's axe, right? Not necessarily for different skins. Right now it's just kind of like, if you get hit with a heavy move, it plays the heavy move sound, right? So that is something they would have to spend more time on, so that wouldn't be able to come anytime soon. But yeah. I will say, yeah, characters like Zetterburn that hit like multiple times really quickly, it is like a lot. They reply though, they say, "Rivals 2 tech sound designer here. Thank you for your feedback, and I'll go a bit in depth about what was and what wasn't changed and why. Two main things happened in this patch. We fixed a bug that was shrinking the stereo field in the last 2 patches, and addressed a bit of issues caused by it. We rebalanced all hit sounds so they're more consistent throughout different characters. All hit sounds are the same as before, except Perfect Shield and Wood Heavy for Chef Loxo. Just rebalanced and processed slightly different in some cases. That's what I was thinking, where it's just like they're a bit too loud now. Bear in mind that anything you're hearing in this patch is an interaction of both those things, so you might need a bit of time to get used to it. But it's not that far from where it was before the bug. As to why we made the changes to the hit sounds at all, that's to create consistency and enhance the mix for multiple platforms and devices, making it sound more clear and allowing us to enhance the whole experience. We knew some characters would get more affected by it, like Clarin, since her hits were far from the rest of the cast, and we'll be looking at specific cases with specific characters to see if they'll need some adjustments, either to hits or to other moves and how they interact, to get them sounding as good as possible, but we believe overall this direction is closer to what we believe in. Okay, so it looks like they're still like monitoring it, like maybe just like, let's say if you get hit by like a multi-hit, it won't play the sound effect for every hit of a multi-hit, right? So that's very good to hear. For our last part of the monitoring section, they say, "Please change the design direction in order to save the game." Before I click on this, I do want to say I released that video about should every character be top tier. So I wonder if this could be in reference, not to my video necessarily, but like parallel thinking. However, I think the Rivals team is actually on the right direction. That video is more of like a think piece than a like, we need to save the game, like it's going in a bad direction. Like I think it's in a good direction. They say, "There is no denying that player numbers are in a constant downward trend, and in my region, Central Europe, We're already at a point where it's really hard to find a match outside of the evening hours, and even then, it's always the same 5 people. The NA region might be more healthy for the moment, but it will get there eventually. So it feels like the game is already down on its last leg, considering the bold plans the team has for continued development and the money that'll cost. I don't want this to be a doom post, I want the game to succeed, and as someone who's actively organizing small locals in my region, and who has tried to sell the game to as many players as possible, I want to share my experience and ideas why the game is not taking off. The fundamental problem with the game is that it seems to have a top-down design philosophy. What I mean by that is the developers seem to value top-level and tournament players' feedback for the most in design and balance of the game, from their perspective first, assuming a player has mastered all the mechanics the game has to offer. It's my strong belief that approaches like this will never work, and is the equivalent to big companies like Ubisoft and EA deciding that their game, XY, will be the next big esports thing. It simply doesn't work that way and always fails. You cannot dictate the success of a competitive game from top to bottom. A successful competitive game needs a strong foundation with a healthy player base of semi-competitive people, on which the actual pro scene builds on. If you cater only to the absolute best of the best, you might make them happy for a short while, but in the end, these people are also content creators for the most part, and their livelihood depends on the game of choice having a big following. If big names focus on the game for a while, it might give the game a short burst in visibility, but when their following actually tries the game themselves and they cannot enjoy it, it's because it's not designed for the above average player to enjoy. These followers will lose interest soon, and the big name player will be forced out of the game to keep a following and income. I think that's exactly why we have seen happen in the past few months. In the end, if they realize it or not, it's also the interest of those top players to have a game that can be enjoyed by less skilled players. Before I move on from this section, I do want to address, I think the game is pretty easy to get into overall. It is harder than like a game like Smash Ultimate, right, but it is also easier than a game like Melee. I think adding in tutorials, which we already know the devs are adding, will help bridge that gap, however, so I think this is a problem for now, but it probably won't be in the long run. Moving on though, they say, this becomes very obvious when looking at the most complained about characters and moves because the answer to almost all those complaints seem to be CC and or floor hug, in order to keep them in check. It even has been said by Dan on the Nolt board that floor hug could not be removed without nerfing jabs and tilts because floor hug keeps them in check for some characters. The problem with this design approach is that if you're expecting players to defend themselves against very basic play, jab and tilt spam, with very advanced and counterintuitive techniques like CC and floor hugging. As I said before, you're making the assumption that your players know and can apply this tech the game has to offer, while this is not the case. You need to apply a different philosophy, where the problem and answer are at the same skill level, so people at a wider skill range can have an equally fun experience. Advanced tech should also elevate your game plan, not be the core of it. The same philosophy needs to be applied to character and matchup balance. Some characters dominate the mid, lower top ranks because they are so much easier to pilot, or have such good matchups just until absolute top level play. It is good that the game is relatively balanced at top level, but below that the balance is horrible and actively keeps people out of the game. Continued on next post because of word count. Oh my god, they keep on going. Okay, we're gonna get it all. I will say, I agree with some of these takes where it's like, if you have like a move, right, the counterplay to the move should generally be as easy as it is to use the move. However, I don't agree with the jab situation, because like jabbing is very easy, right? Like you just hit A, and to counterplay it, you just tap down, right? That's not super advanced. But I do think there should be guides in the game that help clear that for you. I also wouldn't say the game is like horribly balanced, right? However, I do think that characters like Zetterburn and Rano being pretty easy and then also being some of the better characters could be what they're referencing. I feel like if like the characters that were the best were harder, maybe it would kind of like gatekeep people at lower levels from picking the easier characters. However, you're always going to have characters that are stronger at lower levels, like Ganondorf in Smash Ultimate is really good if you're playing with casuals, right? Because they don't know how to dodge the forward smash. Like, that's not the dev's fault, like Ganon's terrible in ranked, like, comp, you know? They continue to say, though, as I said before, I run some small locals, and I've been trying to actively get people into the Rivals 2 scene since release. From the roughly 50 people I tried to convince, only 2 stuck with it for longer than a few hours. These are all good fighting game and platform fighter players, but none of them are at pro player level. They all initially enjoy the game for the first 30 minutes until the above problems shine through. These people don't enjoy having to apply CC and floor hugging, even though they understand it pretty fast once you explain, just to win or counter basic interactions. I think this stems from the fact that both CC and floor hug are very counterintuitive, and not enjoyable by a lot of people. I don't know if I agree with this, it's pretty intuitive to me, or at least the people that I've shown it to. Initially, taking a hit with CC to take over offense feels bad to them. It's like trying to tap your head while rubbing your belly. You sure can learn to do it, but it will never feel natural or good. And while I think CC is needed and good, I also think it should be completely reworked or redesigned to feel like an actual mechanic. It might need its own blocking animation to feel like a real block in order to be a satisfying thing to do. I think it already has its own animation, but if you added like a sound effect maybe? They also go on to say, floor hugging on the other hand will most likely never work for these players. Getting punished after whiff punishing another player will always feel bad to them. This is true, but it doesn't happen normally past like maybe 20 or 30% with most moves. They then say, I recognize that this has been a long post and might sound like my own personal point of view, even though I can back it up with a small sample size, and a friend of mine who runs small locals in a different city would most likely tell the exact same story. But you don't have to take my word for it. Instead of promoting the game only at majors or super majors, designate a team of members to go to as many grassroots events as possible across the country and gather feedback about your game. I'm 100% sure you'll be surprised by results and how much it falls in line with this post. In the end, you'll need these players' approval to have a healthy player base and thus a successful game. And in the end, I think that's what all of us want. So, this is everything from the original poster, right? I thought that this was still them, but it's not. However, I also run small locals, right? I'm in the East Texas scene. It's a super small, pretty rural area. And the players that I've introduced to the game have all really enjoyed it. And the common complaint I actually get is, why would I play this instead of Smash Ultimate whenever I already have like maybe 5,000-6,000 hours in Ultimate, right? It's not necessarily that the mechanics are too hard to understand, like normally they like these new mechanics. So I think the biggest problem with getting people into the game is like, let's say if you're introducing 50 people to the game, right? And 45 of them are already happy with the game they already play. They're probably not going to change the game unless they aren't happy with what they're already playing. And luckily there are a lot of people that don't really like Ultimate that much, so they easily swapped over. But my local scene for Rivals has like gotten pretty like sizable compared to our ult scene. Like normally if you get 15 people in ult, we'll get at least like 13, 14 in Rivals, you know? So, I think that's pretty interesting. I'm excited to see the dev response here. Dan says, if we're talking about the connection between floor hugging and fun, it kind of looks like this. People who don't know about floor hugging and don't use it themselves are having fun. People who know about floor hugging but don't use it themselves are not having fun. And people who know about floor hugging and use it themselves are having fun. So we have a big group of players from Silver through Platinum that really hate the mechanic, but either haven't put the time in to integrate it into their gameplay, or still don't quite understand it. I saw a post on Reddit the other day that was complaining about floor hugging being too easy because of ASDI. It's too easy as a mechanic. But since the August Kickstarter beta, all floor hugging other than weak hits use SSDI, which requires a single press during hit pause in order to get the floor hug, which even the tippy top players are not able to do consistently at this point because of the difficulty. You need to CC the first hit to get the guaranteed SSDI down, without having to press the input, which means you can't do it unless you're in a committed state. If anything, you could make the argument that floor hugging should go back to ASDI instead of SSDI to make the mechanic more consistent and open floor hugging to more gold and platinum players, instead of being something only the tippy top players even bother with. And even the top players right now are frustrated with missing the SSDI downtime, especially in online tournaments. But once you integrate floor hugging, you'll find out a lot of limitations to the mechanic that don't appear until you start using it. A lot of players in the not having fun space just see it as, my moves can always be unsafe on hit unless I grab, so my creativity is limited. But, because they are pressing down during hit pause, their DI is susceptible and opponents can choose different options if they anticipate their opponent likes to floor hug. And the floor hug interactions change pretty drastically as percents go up. This is what I was talking about, where it's like, I play Arcane and you're not going to floor hug my down tilt past like 25, you know? Attacks start putting into knockdown, which allows the floor hugger to get blown up by a combo even harder than if they just took the knockback in many cases. If both the attacker and defender are aware of these situations, a lot more creativity opens up and the grounded punish game is % climb. But, again, you have to learn it. You have to put the time into the systems and use them yourself, so it's pretty opaque and hidden to new players. We plan to tutorialize this feature, which is good, but that's only part of the piece of the puzzle. A lot of this is perception, since Rivals as a franchise has always streamlined obscure mechanics to make them more purposeful, like wave dashing, or remove them entirely, like mashing out of a Yoshi egg. So we have fans that expect floor hugging and CC to be simplified to a very black and white counter or removed entirely. The reason it still exists, though, is because having more situational interactions allows the game to grow and expand, with less of a direct hand from the developers. Players can decide for themselves which defensive options work best in different matchups. I still think non-CC floor hugging at low percents could benefit from more downsides. We have discussed that a ton initially over the last year. Compared to shield, just taking full damage from whatever hits you is quite the downside. But the positive of being able to act and often land a counterattack after a short flinch when you don't go into knockdown is really strong and frustrates players who get reversaled. I think we'll find an area we like eventually for all these mechanics to lie, and good visual feedback for them like we have with CC. But it's an ongoing process to improve, and we have no plans to remove CC or floor hugging as mechanics. This is really great to hear. However, I'm gonna be very honest, I think that these mechanics are what make Rivals rivals, right? It's okay to not like them and to not enjoy them, but you might enjoy a different game more, and that's okay, right? Like, it's like, not every fighting game, not every competitive game is made for everyone, and that's just how it is, like, people like different things. Moving on to the in progress, they say, fixed rank timers. They say, I haven't seen this mentioned elsewhere yet, maybe it has been, but all the timers and ranked for character and stage selection and results are invisible now. Haven't checked casual, I assume this is a bug, and SBS said, thanks for the post, we're looking into the cause and we'll pushing a fix when sorted. I just got off of a ranked session before I recorded this, and I noticed the timers, so maybe this has been fixed and it just hasn't been updated yet. They also say, fleet specials and some quality of life stuff. Fleet down special cannot be ledge cancelled, Fleet F special can't be reversed for a wave bounce, Zetter Dare doesn't have a sour spot, getting hit by the move while above him feels ridiculous. Beyond that, the game still rocks. I do think these would be cool, like fleet buffs, right? However, the Zetter Dare one, I'm not sure how that would change the Zetter Dare, but it does feel a little crazy being spiked from above his head. Dan says, thanks for report, we'll test out both of the fleet suggestions in our closed beta. The hitbox on Zetter and down air that starts higher up is actually considered the sweet spot, while the lower hitbox is just its normal hitbox, that is ever so slightly weaker than the sweet spot. I guess that makes sense, like it's like good to know that, but it also does feel kind of crazy to be like standing next to Zetterburn and be like clipped by that, which is always kind of silly. Moving on though to the plans, which is our last section we have, make tech chasing real in training mode. They say, hi, just let me start by saying that the new training mode is fantastic. Air counter is great, floor hugging options is great, etc. There's only 2 notes I want to make. Up air is missing from the air counter, strangely enough. Tech animations have made it super inconsistent to practice tech chasing. Grounded counter options don't work half the time. Is it a tumble thing? And even when they do work, they're always after the full tech animation, not on the frame as soon as actionable. This also means that when I down throw someone's Edalis and they tech, if I have their default state set to shield, it takes them waiting the entire animation, idle 1 frame, and then their shield comes up. The second issue I has been there for months, which makes me think it's been a messy issue to tackle. Look, air counter option and floor hug have been fantastic options, and the counter delay is just as nice. Just wanted to put this on the radar again, since I know it would be great for practicing tech chasing and increasing the overall floor of the game, which I agree, this seems like something that would be really sick to have. Dan changed it to the plan section, and he said, we're planning to add the up air counter and fix the CPU acting out of tech animations in a future update. Possibly as soon as the mid-month update for March, which is next week I believe, which is really cool. Moving on, they say add characters' names to stage select screen. They say, I was thinking that having the names of characters on the stage selection screen might be a good quality of life change before the match begins. I find myself sometimes confused which character is which when I only have the stock icon to go off of, such as Panther Zetterburn icon looking like Claren's icons for some of her skins, and there are probably more examples. It would help with counterpicking stages and help a lot in the long run as more skins release. Dan says, we're planning to update the stage select in the April patch, and the new update will have both a new stock icon and character name in the UI. This is really cool to hear. I'm excited for the new UIs. It seems like the April patch is going to be pretty chunky because it is like the Rivals Direct patch that we'll have. So I'm really excited for that. The next one says, Fleet Vocal Oddities. Remaking this post, but Fleet lost her "I don't miss" victory quote in the transition to the new update, only having her new "thanks for the practice sesh" play instead. Other than that oversight, Fleet is still the only character in the game without SD lines. I'm wondering if those are planned, or is she just going to remain completely mute? And then SBS says, the lost voice line was a bug addressed in today's hotfix. Yes, the SD line is planned for the future, which is great to hear. I always love those little touches. They also say, Eternal Emperor's Sweet Spot SFX. The skin is wonderful, and everyone was eagerly waiting for its inevitable arrival for good reason. This skin is actually one of the best in the game, by the way. I want to keep it clear, I think it's overall really good. The big downgrade, though, is that the sound effect for the Sweet Spot is kinda like Claren's Sour Spot. It's just a meek sounding zap. Lox's back air feels fantastic to land usually, but now it's pretty meh. Would love to see this revisited. Also, accidentally made this on the old board first, oopsie. They said, that's a good call. He is using plasma hits currently for his Sweet Spots, which are the same as Claren's Sour Spots. We can't just change the Sweet Spots instead because they're tippers unlike Lox, but we will be making a custom change for him. So this is coming in the future, we just have to kind of sit tight, I believe. For our last one they say, a gold palette for Mecha Lox. He's got a rule and style. And Dan said, just to prove that we do indeed read the Nolt board, I have added this palette to our to-do list. I'm not sure how it'll be rewarded just yet though. I think this would be cool, maybe a ranked reward, right? You could give it out oh hey, you hit gold, here's a gold palette for a different skin, and then you do that for every season, right? A random skin will get the gold palette if you have it. Overall, that's the Nolt board with the dev feedback. I am going to go and check out the trending section really quickly, since I think it's important to understand what the community's thinking and feeling, even if the devs don't necessarily comment on it. Right here they say, a disconnect controller button in ranked. I accidentally pressed my keyboard when on the ranked character selection screen, and I couldn't switch to my controller even after self-destructing or unplugging my keyboard. Free elo plus 17 for my opponent. I've actually had this happen to me, and it's pretty annoying because I have two monitors, so switching between monitors between stocks to play a video or something, or text back a friend on Discord, can make this kind of challenging and a bit annoying. I did see this going not viral, right, but it got some traction on Twitter, so I assume the devs have seen this and are doing a fix. I was scrolling through them and I found this one that I do agree with. It says, replace player X on the match loading screen with the player tag. Would be a great touch for offline matches, especially at big events when the game is being streamed. Also, stuff like offline stage striking using the Steam account name instead of player tags confuses people at my local every time. And then this replier says, good idea for offline matches, but I don't want randos online seeing my player tag, which already happens, so I'm not sure if this would really change a whole lot. But yeah, this is a problem that I've noticed. I do wonder if they're not implementing it because of longer tags taking up too much space and they need to rework the UI. But hopefully we get something like that soon. To wrap us up, I'm gonna go ahead and scroll over to the most voted, since I think this is a better reflection of what the community wants than the trending tab. This commenter says, please continue doing 101 videos for new characters on release. New players still have no resource to click on in-game, even on the in-game tutorial section that links to the 101 videos on the Steam page. That tells them that Edelus can freeze shields and what frozen shields do, get super armor strongs during armor, or how to even get armor. I do agree with this, I think this should be standard. As someone who does make content, obviously I have things like my Edelus guide on my channel, right? But a new player is not going to find my channel. I'm relatively small, right? What I'm doing isn't for them, so I do hope that the devs continue to do that. This player says, will items and or ether/casual stages be added? Add P+'s Bowser Castle layout if they will be. This stage is so fun. I remember playing it in P+, and I was like, man, I wish this was in real Brawl as a kid. They said, didn't want to make multiple threads in regards to casual content, so I'm just going to make a bigger singular post. I really think the one thing stopping Rivals 2 from being a bigger party game with friends outside of not being on consoles are the lack of chaotic stages and items. but I'm curious if there's any interest from the team in adding them. Items I can easily understand not making it into the game anytime soon, if at all. Especially with how many new animations would have to be created for them and the coding. Yeah, if you think about this, like each character would have to have like an item holding animation, an item throw animation, etc. But I think their casual appeal and item contests seem like games like 64 and Ult, and potential for deeper gameplay with characters like Malo being converted into an item character a la Snake and Diddy Kong are interesting. The current stage selection in the game are very good. There's great diversity on the layouts and a lot of fun in each stage, but the extra spice like the fire you need to avoid on Blazing Hideout, hazards that aid you like Aramata's jump pad, or fan favorite layouts like Temple and Corneria, and other plot fighters could really aid in keeping the interest up with friends. I understand if this isn't the biggest priority at the moment, especially when there are new competitive layouts to be had, but I really do hope we see some more chaotic stages eventually. They go on to talk about the Bowser's Castle stage in P+, which is really cool because it's got like lava and then hazards, which is like very sick. And I think that stages like this being added like later in the game's lifespan would actually be really cool, and help bolster just the casual appeal of the game. Moving on though, it looks like the stuff has already mostly been responded to, so it's stuff that we've already read, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video here. I'm hoping that I didn't miss too much in this roundup, and I hope that you guys like videos like this. As I said earlier on in the video, I'm going to be getting a scripted, like, Crag matchup chart type video coming out later on this week, and then hopefully we'll have a patch roundup later on next week, and then we'll be getting kind of towards prediction time for the Rivals Direct, which should be on April 1st, which I'm really looking forward to. If you want, let me know your predictions in the comments down below for that, and I really hope to see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching all the way, and I'll see you later. Bye for now!